When the NFL Top 100 rankings were released, one name stood out more than any other, and not for a good reason. Lamar Jackson, one of the most talented and electrifying quarterbacks in football, landed far lower on the list than almost anyone expected. And honestly, when I saw where he ranked, I thought there had to be some kind of mistake. We're talking about a two-time MVP here, a player who can take over a game by himself whenever he's healthy and at his best. But the more you dig into the story, the more shocking it becomes. Injuries, impressive production, clutch performances, and a vote that left plenty of people frustrated all help explain why so many fans believe Lamar Jackson got seriously disrespected. And the deeper you look into the details, the harder it becomes to understand how he ended up so far from the top of this list. What's up, Flock? My name is Tiago. I'm a Brazilian Ravens fan, and welcome back to Purple Flock TV. When I saw this year's NFL Top 100 list, I honestly had to double-check it. Lamar Jackson, a player who had been near the very top of the rankings in recent years, showed up all the way down at number 69. I don't know what your reaction was, but mine was pure disbelief. We're talking about one of the most gifted players in the entire NFL, a quarterback who changed the way the position is played and has been one of the faces of the league for years. That's why this massive drop immediately caught the attention of fans across the football world. What makes this even more surprising is just how dramatic the fall was. Lamar wasn't sitting in the middle of the rankings last year. He was number 2. Dropping 67 spots in a single year is almost unheard of for a player of his caliber. In my opinion, it's one thing for a player to slide down a few spots after a disappointing season. It's something completely different to fall into a range usually occupied by players who aren't nearly as important to their teams. And when I look at Lamar's resume, it's hard for me to believe there are nearly 70 players more valuable than him. This is a two-time MVP we're talking about, someone who's proven over and over again that he can carry a team on his back. And I'm far from the only person who feels that way. Players who have actually lined up against Lamar know exactly how difficult he is to deal with. Former Browns offensive lineman Joel Bitonio summed it up perfectly when he said, "Lamar's special. He's so dynamic to what Baltimore does. When he's on the field, just the threat of his mobility changes the entire game. When a longtime division rival goes out of his way to praise a player like that, it tells you everything you need to know." Lamar's impact goes way beyond the stat sheet. He forces defenses to completely rethink their game plans, and he creates problems that very few quarterbacks in the NFL can create. Before we simply call this ranking a huge mistake, though, there's an important question that needs to be answered. If Lamar is still one of the most dangerous players in football, why did so many of his peers rank him this low? The answer starts with a difficult 2025 season filled with injuries, physical limitations, and stretches where he simply wasn't able to perform at the level we've come to expect. And once we take a closer look at what happened during that season, this entire controversy becomes even more interesting. If there's one reason that helps explain Lamar Jackson's fall in the rankings, it's injuries. Throughout the 2025 season, the Ravens quarterback dealt with a series of physical setbacks that kept him from playing with the freedom fans are used to seeing. Most of those injuries affected his lower body, which is especially concerning for a player whose mobility has always been one of his greatest strengths. The result was a season filled with interruptions, limitations, and a constant feeling that Lamar was never truly operating at full strength. The impact of those injuries became obvious as the season went on. Lamar played in only 13 games, and in 2 of them, he wasn't even able to finish. That would be difficult for any player, but for someone whose game relies so heavily on explosiveness, quick cuts, and escaping pressure, the effects were even more noticeable. Some of the breathtaking runs we've come to expect simply weren't there as often. There were plenty of moments where it looked like he was trying to protect himself rather than pushing his body to the limit and risking an even more serious setback. But here's something I think gets overlooked. When people hear that a player battled injuries all season long, they often picture someone who was barely contributing. That wasn't Lamar. Even while dealing with physical limitations, he remained the driving force behind Baltimore's offense. The Ravens still relied on his decision-making, his football IQ, and his ability to create solutions when plays broke down. Even at less than 100%, he was still the player defenses feared most whenever Baltimore stepped onto the field. And that might be where the biggest injustice of this entire debate comes into play. A lot of voters seem to have focused on the games Lamar missed without fully considering the circumstances behind them. There's a huge difference between a player declining because of performance and a player fighting through injuries all year long. Lamar never stopped being dangerous. He simply had to play under conditions that would have slowed down almost anyone else. And once you start looking at the numbers he managed to put up despite everything he was dealing with, the story starts to look very different. What makes the situation even more remarkable is that despite all the injuries, Lamar Jackson still put up numbers that many healthy quarterbacks would gladly take. When people hear that a player spent much of the season dealing with injuries, they usually assume the statistics were disappointing. But if you actually look at what Lamar accomplished on the field, that narrative starts to fall apart pretty quickly. Even while playing through pain, he continued to lead Baltimore's offense and remain one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. By the end of the season, Lamar had thrown for 2,549 yards, recorded 21 touchdown passes, and finished with a passer rating of 103.8. And here's the part that really caught my attention. That rating was actually higher than the one he posted during one of his MVP seasons. That tells me something important. Even if he wasn't running with the same explosiveness we've seen in the past, he was still making smart decisions, protecting the football, and finding ways to move the offense. In other words, Lamar wasn't relying solely on athleticism to dominate games. Anyone who watched the Ravens closely knows there were several games where Baltimore won, because Lamar found answers when nothing else seemed to be working. When protection broke down, he improvised. When the original play failed, he created something out of nothing. That's one of the reasons his teammates respect him so much. Wide receiver Zay Flowers put it perfectly when he said, "He can do everything from anywhere. In the pocket, running. If that's not a threat, I don't know what is." That quote says a lot about how players view Lamar. They see things that don't always show up in traditional statistics. That's why when I see Lamar sitting at number 69 on this list, I can't help but feel that too many people focused on how many games he played rather than how well he played when he was available. The numbers tell a completely different story than the ranking does. And what's even more impressive is that despite the injuries, the setbacks, and all the obstacles that came with the season, Lamar still put Baltimore in position to compete for meaningful goals. In many ways, it was during those difficult moments that his true value became even more obvious. One thing that separates great players from everyone else is their ability to step up when the pressure is at its highest. And if Lamar Jackson proved anything during the 2025 season, it's that he thrives in those moments. Despite battling injuries for much of the year, he remained the emotional and on-field leader of the Ravens. Whenever Baltimore needed someone to take control, all eyes continued to turn toward number 8. That became especially clear during the final stretch of the season. With the Ravens fighting for playoff positioning and trying to keep their division title hopes alive, Lamar delivered some of his most important performances of a year. Every game felt like it carried enormous weight, and one mistake could have changed everything. Yet time and time again, Lamar helped keep Baltimore in the fight. He may not have been the healthiest version of himself, but he was still the player the franchise trusted when everything was on the line. Another part of his impact that often gets overlooked is the respect he commands inside the locker room. Teammates consistently talk about Lamar as someone who elevates everyone around him. That's not something you'll find on a stat sheet, but it matters. When a leader keeps fighting through adversity and refuses to quit, it sends a powerful message to the rest of the team. Players see that commitment, and it inspires them to raise their own level of play. That's why evaluating Lamar's season based only on statistics or games missed doesn't tell the full story. His influence reached far beyond the numbers. He helped keep Baltimore competitive through difficult circumstances and remained the face of the franchise when pressure was at its highest. And perhaps the most encouraging part for Ravens fans is that the organization clearly believes better days are ahead. They identified the issues that hurt the team in 2025, and they wasted no time trying to fix them.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button to help the purple flock grow.
If there's one word that captures the mood in Baltimore heading into 2026, it's optimism. After a season filled with injuries, constant pressure on the quarterback, and major issues along the offensive line, the Ravens knew they couldn't stand still. The The front office recognized that Lamar Jackson spent far too much time running for his life instead of running the offense. Too often, he was forced to escape collapsing pockets and create something out of nothing just to keep plays alive. And when your franchise quarterback is taking that kind of punishment week after week, changes have to be made. That's exactly why General Manager Eric DeCosta made upgrading the offensive line a priority. Baltimore brought back veteran John Simpson and added highly touted first-round pick Vega Ione in an effort to strengthen the unit. The organization didn't stop there. Changes were also made on the coaching staff, with the goal of improving both pass protection and overall offensive consistency. The expectation is simple. Give Lamar a cleaner pocket, give him more stability up front, and allow him to play the game the way he's capable of playing it. And honestly, when I look at the situation, it's hard for me to believe Lamar will stay out of the NFL's elite tier for very long. The talent hasn't disappeared. The arm is still there. The football IQ is still there. The ability to turn a broken play into a highlight reel moment is still there. What held him back in 2025 wasn't a lack of ability. It was a lack of stability, health, and protection. If those issues are addressed, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Lamar right back in the MVP conversation. What makes this story even more fascinating is that Lamar enters 2026 with something to prove. The ranking, the criticism, and all the questions surrounding his season have created extra motivation for a player who spent much of his career proving doubters wrong. Former teammate Kyle Van Noy summed it up perfectly when he said, "A lot of people said he wasn't quarterback enough, and he's proven those people wrong." And if Lamar Jackson's career has taught us anything, it's that betting against him usually doesn't end well. This ranking may look like a sign of decline today, but it could end up becoming the fuel behind one of the biggest comeback stories of his career. After looking at everything surrounding this situation, one thing is clear to me. Lamar Jackson may have fallen in the rankings, but his talent hasn't gone anywhere. Injuries absolutely impacted his season, and there's no denying that. But even while battling through physical limitations, he continued to put up strong numbers, lead the Ravens in critical moments, and remind everyone why he's still one of the most dangerous players in football. And maybe that's why this debate has become so heated. A lot of people focus on the games Lamar missed, but not enough attention was paid to what he accomplished when he was actually on the field. Throughout his career, he's faced criticism, doubt, and endless questions about whether he can succeed at the highest level. Every time, he's answered the same way, by proving people wrong on the field. That's why it wouldn't be surprising at all if this ranking becomes yet another source of motivation for him heading into the new season. Now I want to hear from you. Was Lamar Jackson disrespected by being ranked number 69 on the NFL Top 100 list? Or do you think the ranking accurately reflected his 2025 season? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out, and I'll see you in the next video.